through the book of James. If it's your first week, you might think, well, okay, I probably missed too much to know what's going on. And it really doesn't work that way with James. I think he kind of keeps a flow of thought all the way through it, but he'll bounce around and hit on one topic and then kind of bounce and hit another one. And it doesn't really, you can come in and out of James and still pick up quite a bit. And what he's talking about today, if it is your first week, you picked a great week to come, because I think it's a super practical stuff, especially for people who might not know if the Bible has anything for them or not. You know, a lot of times the Bible's a great big book and it can seem mysterious, and we wonder, well, is there anything in there that I could use to help me get where I want to go? And this is stuff today that anybody can use and help them. I read just this week, a researcher named William Meninger found that 80% of people who get fired are not fired because of technical incompetence. You know, if a person works as a cook or an engineer or a mechanic or a medical, they're not fired because they don't know how to do the job as far as the technical part of it. They're fired more often because of 80% because of relational or emotional incompetence. They don't relate well with other people. They get into some big personal feud with the boss, or they don't show up on time. They're not prompt. They're defensive and angry. They don't do the things they need to do to advance in terms of how we bounce off of people. And James is talking about that today. How you can be better socially prepared in this world, but also how you can better represent Christ, because everything that Jesus does and the way that he lives his life, it works. The life of Christ works. And it will take you further than you'd be able to go otherwise. So we're just going to look at a couple of verses. I don't have a lot to go through today. We're going to start with this here. James 1:21 says, "Get rid of all the moral filth and the evil that's prevalent." And that "get rid of" is like taking off dirty clothes. That's the same word you'd use there. So like strip off all that old stuff you used to do and the evil that's so prevalent, and humbly accept the word that's planted into you. And that idea, humbly accept the word planted in you. It's a clever phrase. The word, he's talking about the word about Jesus. So humbly accept that. You know, Jesus, the life of Jesus makes sense, James says. And if you take that in you and you take it in you humbly, you're going to find that it takes you where you want to go. And it's not so much about knowing like the word, like the Bible. It's not like knowing every verse of the Bible. It's just keep your eyes on Jesus. Be like Jesus, act like Jesus, learn to think like Jesus, and it's going to, if you'll humbly do that, it's going to take you where you want to go. Humble's important. I had somebody that I worked with in another church, and I was a supervisor for them, and I was trying to help them get through some things, and I was telling them, well, hey, you know, you should have done this a little different. And every time I told them anything, they would say, oh, yeah, I know. Oh, yeah, I got it. Yeah, I got that. I know what you're saying. And finally I said, no, you don't got it. If you got it, we wouldn't be here having this conversation. You clearly don't got it. So just shut up and let me talk you through this thing. Now, you could argue perhaps I had a relational problem at that point with how I was handling it, and I'm open to that suggestion. But it was so frustrating because he wouldn't take any of the things I was saying. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I got it. And a lot of times we don't take it humbly. Somebody will toss something at you. It's like, okay, yeah, that's not my problem. I struggle with lots of things, but I'm okay there, so we can just skip over that one. And you seem to think about it, because the stuff that James is going to get into, I think, is stuff that affects most people. I think most people have a hard time with these things we're going to get into. I think most people have a hard time doing them, even though they're real simple commands. And so don't assume that this is not something that you need to sharpen your edge on. Don't assume it's the stuff that you can just blow right past and means nothing to you, because if you don't watch out, these are the kind of things that can trip you up and really can break down relationships, both at home and at work and at church and with your friends and neighbors. So here we go. This is the verse. And the next slide. This is the only slide, but this is the rest of our sermon right here on this slide. He says, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, because man's anger or human anger doesn't produce the righteousness that God desires." So he says, take note of this. In other words, you could miss it. It's the kind of thing that could fly right by you. And again, you might not humbly take it in. Everyone should be quick and two slows. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. And with anger especially, be careful, because anger is going to take you away from where God wants to go. So I just want to look at all three of those things and have that conversation. We need to listen more. You know, as people, most people have a hard time listening. A lot of times when you're talking to somebody, especially if you're talking about something kind of heated, you're already thinking about what you're going to say before they finish saying what they're saying, right? And if you're kind of important, for whatever reason, maybe you're popular or you're higher ranking or you have a little more money or a little more influence, whatever it is, if you're kind of important, it's even easier to want to interrupt and get in there. And there's a story about Winston Churchill that's kind of funny. Churchill, his son-in-law, was given a kind of a talk at a table, and Churchill interrupted him and jumped in there and started talking and said, "Oh, no, that's wrong," he said. And he started saying what he thought it was. And the son-in-law tried to interrupt back in, and Churchill said, "Don't interrupt me when I'm interrupting you." And if you're important, that's how you think, right? I mean, I can interrupt you, but you can't interrupt me. And so be quick to listen. Listening is an act of service. When you listen, you're serving the other person. You're being kind to them. Jesus was great at that. When you read through the Bible, Jesus asks, there's over 300 times he asks questions. And he asks questions of everybody. He asks questions of prostitutes and tax collectors and people who are on the very bottom of the social spectrum. He asks questions of the people who are at the very top of the social spectrum. Asks questions of his disciples. A lot of times when they would ask Jesus a question, he would respond by asking a question. And you think about it, if he's God, then why is he asking so many questions? Doesn't he already know what the answers are? But I think you're missing something there. I think he wants to hear you. I think he wants to hear from you. I think he wants to hear your thoughts. And I think at some level, it's an act of service when you just slow down and listen. When you just slow down and give someone your attention. God in heaven, I don't know where you stand on this. I'm assuming in this room there are some people who are kind of skeptical about whether you believe in all this or not. But just taking it as fact for just a minute, imagine for just a second that all of it's exactly like we say, it's all true. God's in heaven. There's no one more powerful or important than God. And yet God will stop and listen to a 4-year-old pray about the thunderstorm. Have you ever thought about what an amazing thing that is? That God in heaven, I mean, surely God's got more important things to do to listen to some kid cry about the thunder, but he doesn't. I mean, that's one of the core teachings of Christianity, that he will stop and listen to you when you talk, even if it's something that probably he knows immediately isn't that big a deal. We talked about this at camp in a different story. There's a funeral that Jesus goes to, and he goes to the funeral, tells his disciples ahead of time, I'm going to go to this funeral, and I'm going to raise that guy from the dead. I'm going to go there for that purpose. That's why we're going to the funeral, so I can raise him from the dead. And when he gets there to the funeral, the family of the guy who's dead, they're kind of put out with Jesus because they were all friends, and they say, Jesus, where were you? We sent you word that he was sick and you never came, and then he got sicker and sicker and sicker, and finally he died. Where were you? And Jesus, it says, looks at the crowd, and they're all crying. And then there's this little verse, and it's a verse that you learn to memorize quick because it's a short verse. Jesus wept. Just as food for thought more than anything else. Because I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't have wept. I wouldn't have cried. I'm not wired that way. If I went to a funeral and I knew when I was going to the funeral, I'm going to bring the dead person back. That's why I'm going to the funeral, is to bring the dead person back. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't cry. Rains, dry that up. Watch this. I got this. Touch the casket and they're back, right? I wouldn't take time to cry. Why does Jesus cry? Well, he's crying because you're crying. That's the only reason there can be. He's sad because you're sad. He has such empathy for people that when he sees them upset, he's upset. Even though he knows he's going to turn it around. And truthfully, because he's God, even though he knows that Lazarus in that moment was already in heaven, Lazarus was fine, right? But he's sad because they're sad. He's broken because they're broken. And when you're quick to listen, you start doing that. You start having a bigger heart. This is not an area that I have a lot of strength. I want to get better at it because you never regret that. Now, I've regretted speaking too fast. I've regretted putting my foot in my mouth, but I've never regretted listening too hard. Oh, why was I so sympathetic? Why did I listen and listen? Why didn't I jump in there and give my opinion? I've never done that, right? You never regret listening a little more. I had a couple in California that I was friends with. And he just didn't have a romantic gene in his body. It just wasn't how he was wired. He had no romantic He just didn't have it. I mean, he's a great guy. He just didn't have that. And so normally what he would get for his wife on their anniversary or birthday was an apology. Oh, I forgot. Hey, let's go to the store, get whatever you want, you know. And he wouldn't even realize. He'd come home on the anniversary and she's mad. And he couldn't figure out why she was mad. He's going through all the things he did. Did I do this? Did I do that? He's going through all the lists, and he can't think what he did. And finally, she'll tell him, well, I got you this, but I guess you didn't get me anything. Oh, honey, I'm sorry. Let's go. And then that never worked, right? Let's go. Whatever you want. I'll buy whatever you want. Let's go. And he really didn't do it on purpose. He said he just would forget. And so one year, she said to him, you know, this year, we're going to change things up. Normally, I don't tell you it's coming. I just want to see if you'll remember, and you never remember, and then I'm mad. I'm mad, and you're upset. So this year, I'm going to remind you often that it's coming. And you would think maybe he'd be mad about that, but he's like, yeah. Yes, let's do that. He said, keep reminding me. I'm going to get you something this year. So she did. She brought it up several times. And a few days ahead of time, he started kind of getting like smirking around the house like he had the perfect gift. He was excited about it. He's way ahead. So they came to their anniversary, and she gives him something. I can't remember what she gives him. It's been a long time. But it was, and he's, you know, kind of touched by it. Oh, thanks. That's just what I wanted. That's really nice. I can't believe you remember that I said something about that. And yeah, that's great. And he puts that to the side. Then he's really wanted to give her his gift. And he hands her the gift. And he's so excited. Here you go. And it's a shotgun with her name on the hilt of it back here. It's a real nice shotgun, but it wasn't really what she was hoping for the anniversary. And so she's like, what's this? Well, it's a shotgun. Well, I see that it's a shotgun, but what are you thinking here? It's anniversary. Well, I thought we could go shooting together. I don't want to go shooting together. And she goes, well, yeah, we will go shooting together, and it'll be fun, and it's like we'll be together. And she's getting madder and madder and madder, and he can't figure out why she's getting madder and madder and madder. Well, he was sure it was the right gift, and I went ahead and I bought it. Well, if that's the gift, then, you know, forget it. And then a day or two later, they're in my office. And so they're in my office, and we're talking about this whole thing. Can you believe, she says, that he got me a shotgun? And well, no, it does seem like kind of an odd choice for an anniversary. So what was going on? I asked him, and he said, well, when we were dating, we would go out and I would shoot, and she would tell me how good I was at it and how great I was, and we would just hang out for hours, just how much she loved being out there watching me shoot. And she said, I was lying, she said. I never liked watching you shoot. But okay, well here's the thing though, the whole story. Okay, because you could picture something like that, right? You could picture something like that happening. Okay, why was she lying? Well, because she wanted him to like her, right? And she wanted to show him how much she liked him. And so she would just go on and on about this thing. She was interested in that because she was interested in him. Now, you could argue the same thing the other way. The reason why he never forgot anniversaries while they were dating, right? And when you're dating, there's 1,000 stupid anniversaries. This is when we first said hello to one another. This was the day we first went on our first date. This is the day that it's a bunch of stupid things. Anyway, so I wasn't very good at it either. And so I was kind of sympathetic to him. But he remembered it when he was dating, because when he was dating, it was important, right? I want to show her it's important to her, so it's important to me. If it's important to her, it's important to me. So I'm going to show her how much I love her, right? And do all this thing. But once you're married, well, you don't do that anymore. Right? You know I love you. I let you live here in the house with me. I help pay for the payments together. You know I love you because we got a kid, you know. Surely you know I love you at this point. But there's something powerful about the listening. Right? I don't know if you can miss that. There's just something so powerful about being interested in it because they're interested in it. And you do it easy when you're dating, but you don't always do it easy once you're together. And that's the power of just serving somebody, you know? The power of just serving somebody and enjoying what they're enjoying because they enjoy it. And we need to be quicker to do that. One other thing on this idea of listening more. We've been trying as a church to encourage people who have been in the faith for a while to disciple people who are just getting started, you know, or maybe just a little further behind. And I think everybody should have that. I think if you're a Christian, you should have somebody in your life who is calling you to something more. You know, they're calling you to something better, they're a little further in the faith than you're in, and they know a few more things, and they pray a little harder, and they've seen a few more things, and they help you, they encourage you. You need to have somebody like that in your life, and you need to cultivate that relationship. And if you're somebody who has one a little further, you should find some people who are coming up and invest in them. But when we talk about that, sometimes the people who should be investing in others will say, well, I don't even know what I would say. I don't even know what I would do. And you could do a lot worse than just listening and asking questions. How's your prayer life going? You know, what's the last thing you prayed for and God really came through? Or maybe more importantly, what's the last thing you prayed for and God didn't come through? And how'd you feel about that? You know, what are you reading now? What do you think about Jesus? What do you think about this story? What strikes you about that? I think you could do a lot worse than just listening to them talk. You think you've got to have all the answers, and you don't. Jesus seemed to model that perfectly. He could be with people who are just spiritual babies, and he's Jesus, right? And he's asking questions. He's interested in what they're interested in. There's just something powerful about that. So quick to listen, but slow to speak. Proverbs chapter 17, verse 28 says, even a fool is thought wise if he just stays quiet. Even a fool is thought wise if he'll just shut up. You know, just not keep going on and on. Even a fool is thought wise if they'll learn to hold back a little bit. There was a movie several years ago called Galaxy Quest, and it's kind of like a spoof on Star Trek, and it's kind of complicated to explain what it all is about, but the gist of it was this crew of Earthlings, and they're just actors in a TV show. They're grabbed by the aliens, and they think it's a real thing, not a TV show, and they want these humans to come and lead their starship, and that's the plot. And then what they're trying to do is protect this weapon they have called the Omega-13, and the enemy's trying to get the Omega-13. And nobody really knows what it does. It's kept kind of quiet what the Omega-13 does, but it's a super powerful weapon. And at the end of the movie, the Omega-13 is revealed to be a device that can go back in time 13 seconds. If you have the Omega-13, you can go back in time 13 seconds. And everybody's like, that's it? That's nothing. You know, what a stupid weapon. Who wants to go back in time 13 seconds? There have been moments in my life when I would have given $20,000 to go back in time 13 seconds. 13 seconds would have been enough. You know, you're in a job interview and they ask you a question. You toss out an answer and you can tell immediately it's the wrong answer. 13 seconds would have saved me there. In an argument with Julia, and I had to say one more thing in 13 seconds, I could undo that. Or you try to make some little joke, you know. I didn't know you were pregnant. Well, I'm not pregnant. Oh, well, then that's a problem. And 13 seconds, right? 13 seconds, I could just go back in time and that wouldn't have happened. And it would save me a bunch, because there's been many times when I've just spoken too quickly. And it's a curious thing why I feel like I need to put something in there all the time. I wish I wasn't like that. Now, my human nature, the way I'm wired as a person, I'm more of an introvert. If I go to a party, it's easier for me to stand off to the side and just watch everything else that's going on. I don't want to be in the middle of the circle dancing. You know, everybody's clapping while you're dancing. That'd be hell for me. I don't want that at all. I'm more off to the side at the party. I don't want to be in the center of attention. My wife's more of an extrovert. Words come very easily to her. It's very easy for her to talk and explain and tell jokes and be in the middle. Just naturally, how she's wired, makes me think it's easier to be a Christian, and maybe Christians are more righteous, introverts are more righteous Christians. But I don't want to get into that, because that's kind of a thick thing there. But as a preacher though, sometimes I feel like I have to put my words in there. I feel like I have to say stuff. I've got to get words in there, and I don't know why I do that. It's not natural to me. It's not my natural disposition. And I don't know why I do it. And I wish sometimes I would just be a little slower to speak. I wish I'd be a little more slow to put stuff out there. A lot of preachers lack self-awareness. Will preach and preach and preach when it's obvious that the audience has already given up on what you're saying. We had that happen at camp a couple years ago. We'll go to this cave, and we can get a lot of kids in the cave at a time, and we'll go to this cave and we'll sing a few songs and do a devotion. And a couple years ago, one of the kids from Johnson was there, and he said, hey, I'd like to speak at the cave thing. I'd like to speak. I'll just do a devotion. Great. Yeah, to help me. Yeah, won't you do it? Just keep it kind of short, because they're all standing, you know, during the cave thing. It's muddy and they can't sit down, so just keep it short. Oh, yeah, gotcha. Well, he went in there and it was too long. It was 20, 25 minutes. He just kept going on and on. And it happens. I'm a preacher. It can happen. And you can see the kids are dying and they're trying to get out of there. And so I told him afterward, hey, listen, buddy, great content, just a little long. Try to shorten it up next time. Oh, yeah, I know. Clearly you don't know, or I wouldn't be talking to you. Just keep it a little shorter next time. Yeah, I got it. Okay. Second time, had 4 times. We had divided the camp into four groups. Second group comes in, and again, he went too long. In fact, I think he went a little longer the second time than the first. Caught him afterwards. Hey, listen, really good content. It's got to be shorter. You're killing the kids. There's just no way they're going to stay with you the whole time. It's got to be shorter. Oh, yeah. I didn't mean to do it. I kind of got off on this thing here. I won't do it again. Got you. Third time, come into the deal. Well, there were two boys in the camp, and they required a lot of extra attention. And I don't think they were necessarily mean boys. My dad would have called them squirrels. They were just squirrels. And I don't know if that communicates or not, but they were. And they were kind of in the middle of this group of students. And we're talking, and the guy has got to be starting to preach. And in the middle of preaching, in a quiet pause, in the middle of what he was saying, one of the boys farted long. It really was powerful. I mean, it was echoing off the walls. I mean, it was intense. And all the kids, want to laugh, right? Because, it's the kind of thing that doesn't happen in church very often. And so you want to laugh. And so it's like this low rumble of chuckle all the way through the deal. And so as a preacher, I know there's only one move at that point. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week. And you're done. There's nothing else to say. There's nothing else. You can't say anything else. But he kept trying. He kept trying to bring, okay, stay with me, kids, stay with me. He'd say, and he's trying to get his whole message done, and there's just no way to get it done. But as a speaker, sometimes as preachers, we don't have any self-awareness. We're not aware that we're wiping people out. People are dying, and you just keep talking. And that could be something that you do too. If you're talking to somebody and they've already used about 4 wows in the conversation, that's a sign. Wow. Okay, wow. And that's a sign. Maybe it's time to slow up. You can see their eyes glazing over. That's a time. If you feel like you've got to hold on to them to keep them there while you're talking to them, they keep backing away, but you keep bringing them in, that may be a sign that maybe you need to take a second look at this thing. And most people are not aware that they're talking too much. Most people have no idea. Whenever I've been challenged about it, I didn't know I was doing it. Most people don't know it. And you should ask. If you think there's any chance this could be you, you should ask somebody, hey, do you think I talk too much? And you want to pay real close attention to the pause. If there's a pause before they answer. Do you think I talk too much? No. Then that means yes. If there's that long pause, that means yes. Or if you want to pay attention to that, you want to pay attention if they try to minimize it, but they're still wanting to say something. Oh, well, maybe just that much, maybe just a little bit. You talk too much. You want to pay attention to that. We don't want to hurt each other's feelings. None of us like doing that. But it's a big problem for most people. And it's worth thinking about why you do that. Why do I feel like I got to jump in there and say one more thing? Is it a fear of looking dumb or looking unimportant? Is it a fear of being excluded? As Christians, we shouldn't have fear. God's got us. God's got us, and Jesus loves us, and we're okay. And if everybody doesn't think you're brilliant, that's all right. One of two things. Either you're not that brilliant and you need to shut up, because even a fool is thought wise if they don't talk. Or you're quite brilliant and they'll figure it out eventually, but you're not hurt by that. You're not. You're not. Learn to slow down. So quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. The Hebrew word for anger, or for bitterness, the Hebrew word for bitterness, if I recall, is the same Hebrew word for hot coals. And why it's the same word, the hot coals is evocative. The hot coals are there simmering, and then the wind hits it and it lights right back up again. And some people are like that with their anger. They're just lightly boiling all the time. And at work, everybody else knows who that person is immediately. Hey, one of you guys need to go tell Barbara what's going on. I'm not telling Barbara what's going on. No. One of you guys need to go tell Chuck what we're getting on. I'm not talking to Chuck about this. You go talk to Chuck about this. I'm not jumping into that. Because I know that if I tell them that, they're going to get mad at me. And I know if they get mad at me, they're never getting over it. And I'm scared of it. And so I'm not fooling with that. You go talk to them. And you recognize it when it's somebody else. You feel it. If you're at the house and everything's peaceful and somebody comes home from a long day and they throw the thing down and the coat and they're mad, you can feel it, right? I mean, you feel somebody else's anger. It has a way of leaking into everything else. And there are some people who just kind of stay at a light boil all the time. They're just constantly easily irritated. They constantly feel like they're surrounded by idiots. They're surrounded by incompetent people. Everything's always slowing them down. Everything's always messing them up. They've got things to do. And they never really take any responsibility for it. There's always a reason. There's always a reason. You know, what's the problem? Nothing. What's the problem with you? Well, why are you acting like this? I'm not acting like anything. Well, and if you can get them to admit it, well, maybe it's because I got so much on my plate. Maybe if you just do a little more around here, I wouldn't be so mad. Maybe if you had, the officer says, do you know how fast she's going? Officer, I was in a terrible hurry. I've got to get to wherever I was going. And you can't admit that it's you. And we just kind of keep that light anger boiling all the time. We feel like the world owes us something. We feel like we deserve more, that it's been unfair. And by the way, just keeping that kind of a chip on your shoulder does such terrible things to your soul. There are some people in here that, compared to other people in here, have been dealt a harder hand. I'll admit that for sure. I talked about that at camp. If you had parents who were sort of normal, not great parents, not great parents, just sort of normal, you should thank God for that every day. Because not everybody gets that deal. Not everybody else gets the same deal. And I get that. But you still have life and breath. The world is in front of you, and you can do anything you want. And once you start carrying that chip on your shoulder and feel like the world owes you something for the bad deal you were given, you become a worse person. And it does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Just that chip on your shoulder. You know, the fruit of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. There's 9. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. When you're angry, which ones of those things do you feel? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. You don't feel any of those things. When you're ticked off, you don't have any of the fruit of the Spirit. You don't have any of the Spirit working in you. And for those of you who are just angry all the stinking time, then God's never doing much in your life. He's never accomplishing very much. You're driving people away. One of my jobs at church camp is to enforce the rules of the camp. And no one's ever happy about the rules being enforced. You know? Can you go change that shirt? You know? Why? Well, it's got a half-naked woman on the back of it. We don't want that here at camp. Well, really? I wear it to school. Well, this in school, is it? And I don't think you wear it. But anyway, go change it. Really? And then you give this whole argument, this whole deal. Hey, could you not swear at the other people when they foul you in basketball? We're here at church camp. Well, I just slipped out. I know it did. Don't do it again. Yeah, okay, whatever. Well, they're just slipping out, a little couple slipping out. I was just so stressed by how crowded it was. I needed to catch my breath over here with my girlfriend out of the way in this dark area. Yeah, sounds great. Get back with the crowd. Well, they don't understand. And no one's ever happy that you told them, wow, I'm so glad that you came and informed me about that. I was just wandering astray, and now you came out and made my life better. No one's ever happy that someone will come out there and tell them what's going on, right? And so what you end up and do is you start to avoid those people. You don't want to set them off. And you know, when you're the one who's lightly angry all the time, people are avoiding you. They don't want to have those conversations with you. They don't want to get close to you. They don't want to know you that well, and it doesn't produce the righteous life that God desires. So what to do about these things? Well, quit doing it. So how do you do it? How do I become quicker to listen, slower to speak, slower to become angry? Well, it's an easy solution. It really is. It's not hard to remember, and it always works. When you do it, you confess it to God and say you're sorry and ask Him to give you strength not to do it again. And that'll fix it. Now, it won't fix it right off. First couple days you do it, it may take a lot of apologizing. Some of the times when you do it, you may have to apologize to somebody else. God may convict you about it. You know, as a parent, if you've embarrassed your 8-year-old by yelling at them in public when they really didn't do very much to begin with, you may have to go back and say, hey, I don't know why I did that. I got all mad, and I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have ever said that. I don't know why I did. I'm sorry. And some of you are thinking, my mom or dad would never have said that to me. Well, that's kind of the point, right? I mean, there's something about living different. You know, to your husband or wife, sometimes you may have to apologize. I can't believe I kept interrupting you there. We were all talking, and I just kept having to get my opinion in there, and I don't know why I did that. I'm sorry. I need to listen more. And it's embarrassing, but there's something powerful about just telling God, or sometimes telling somebody else you're sorry. And the more you do it, it's like taking a splinter out of your thumb. It hurts a lot until you get it out, and then it doesn't really bother you at all. And if you'll confess these things to God, He'll start to change your heart. He really will. Even on the anger, which to me is the hardest one of those three, even on the anger, He'll start to change your heart. He will. You just confess it to Him. If you're a person who's angry all the time, this is desperately important that you work on it, because God can't do anything with you when you're like that. If you're a person who's angry all the time and wonder why you don't ever feel the presence of God, that's the reason. You don't need to wonder about it anymore. That's the reason. And you need to confess this thing. If you're a person who's always talking, again, you're probably not going to be aware of it. So ask the people close to you. And if they give you some reason to think that maybe it's a struggle for you too, then start praying about that too. And God will work on your heart. And when you get better at those things, quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, every relationship in your life will improve. This is the secret. It'll make your marriage better, make your walk with your kids better, make your work better, make your church better. It'll make it all better. Okay, I'm going to have the band come back up. I'm going to give you an opportunity, if anybody in here needs to pray about this thing, to come pray. Now, you can pray by yourself if you want to, either where you're standing or you can come here to the front and pray. But I'll have some people on both sides, and they'll pray with you. And you don't have to get into it if you don't want to. You don't have to get into it and say, well, I need you to pray about this stupid thing I did. You don't have to say any of that. You can just say, hey, would you pray for me? And they'll pray for you. And they'll ask God to move in your life. And there's something real powerful about that too. Like I said, that's the trick. If you want to get over it, you just have to ask God for strength. And He'll give it. It's a prayer He always wants to answer. Won't you stand up? I'm going to pray with you now, and then we'll have a time of invitation.